retired or active, to ever sign an exclusive licensing agreement with NASA or any kind of licensing agreement with NASA.
Welcome everyone to Momentum Elite Sports Business Podcast. Today we have a really special guest, somebody who has been on the business side and on the sports side, and he's won some really big championships. Femi Ayanbadejo, welcome to the show.
Hey Tanvir, how are you, brother? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. So Femi, you are a former NCAA player who went to the NFL undrafted, won a Super Bowl, then did your MBA, and then you have a partnership with NASA. How crazy of a career and how remarkable of a journey is that? Kudos to you. And I'm sure our viewers or watchers, listeners will love to dive into all these great things you've accomplished in your career.
Accomplished a lot of things I never thought I would do, but I'm not even close to being done. You know, I still have so much more to do. And I'm really motivated by science, very motivated by critical thinking and education. And so I think that my journey and the things that interest me in my company just reflect that interest and that curiosity that I've never lost had it as a kid.
That's amazing. I think the best thing you said right now, Femi, is you're not done. I think we're never done.
I'll never be done, bro.
Never gonna be done. On the concept of never being done, Femi, how did it all start for you? How was it like growing up, playing sports, playing football?
Yeah, you know, I have an interesting life arc. You know, my dad came to the U.S. from Nigeria. My mom's mother came to the U.S. from Ireland during the potato famine. They met in Chicago at university, studied together, and then we moved back to Nigeria. We lived in a house with no running water, no electricity for a few years.
Wow.
And eventually my mom had enough of Nigeria. We moved back to the States, lived in poverty in the U.S. in a housing project, you know, but the one thing that was always consistent in my family was education. My mom has a master's degree. My dad has a master's degree. My stepdad has a PhD. And what really changed my life is when we left Chicago and moved out of a housing project to Santa Cruz, California. And instead of worrying about survival, if you think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like the first thing is like shelter, survival, protection, right? Once that was taken care of and Santa Cruz provided that, my whole life arc really changed. I got a telescope, you know, I was able to start really looking at things from a science perspective. Even as a kid in poverty, I was able to look at some of these things, but I think survival had more of a priority than curiosity at that point. But once survival was taken care of, my true potential as a curious, you know, human being could take over. First thing that really excited me was the stars and astronomy and astrophysics. And I really took a latching on to that as a little kid, and that curiosity from really wanting to understand space travel and light speed and time and all these things really started to permeate all these other areas of my life as I got older. Carl Sagan was a big influence on me when I was young. I really loved him and his energy.
As a kid, my parents took me and my younger sisters to India for 5 years. I did my grade 1 to 5 there. And it was a very different step down from Toronto. Came back to Canada, I was like, you know what? Wow, what a great country. But I always remembered what it was like. And I was always constantly reminding me that, hey, you know, you are pretty privileged to be here. So my question for you, Femi, you know, given that you spent those few years in Nigeria with no running water, did that somehow propel you to say, you know what, life is pretty good and I got to make the best of what I can do with the opportunities that I have in front of me in the US?
I'd be lying if I said I remembered everything about Nigeria. A lot of it is my mom telling me stories about it. I just know that there's something about where I come from realizes the value in education and continuing to work your way up the hill, so to speak, right? And for me, I would feel like I'm doing myself a disservice if I'm not always trying to be the best version of myself, right?
Yes.
And I've always been an A-type, kind of a bit obsessive compulsive about things as a kid. So this idea of structure, taking advantage of opportunities, continuing to be uncomfortable, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. These are all things that allow me to excel as a data science, nutritionist, you know, health and wellness expert, as well as a professional athlete. Like those core traits translate to everything.
So how did this structure help you make a mark in the NCAA and the NFL?
I would say that where a lot of young kids, you know, I was a 16-year-old senior in high school and I was a good high school athlete. And as a 17-year-old, when I graduated, I made the conscious decision to take a year off of school and get a job. I worked in a retirement home in the kitchen. Having that job as a 17-year-old, I knew that I was only going to do that for a year, and that I would go to my local junior college, and then I would play football and baseball, and that all my dreams would happen after that. And man, they did. But people thought I was crazy when I said I was going to get a job and go to the gym and work out. And guess what? In a year, I gained 20 pounds of muscle from when I was 17 to when I turned 18. I went out and crushed it in football and baseball, and ended up, I could have played either sport, ended up getting a football scholarship. And this regiment, this job, this structure was all my idea. No one told me to do it. It was something that was in me that I knew would give me the best chance at reaching my goals. Doesn't mean I haven't made mistakes. Doesn't mean I haven't, fallen off or questioned things I've done, but to take your life into your own hands as a teenager and to see things go the way that you want, to get a Division I scholarship, to make it to the NFL. None of that would have happened had I just gone right to college out of high school. I looked at myself and saw my flaws as a 17-year-old and said, I need to work on this, and this. And the way to do that is to step back, get a job, make some money, go to the gym, exercise, get your head right, and then go back to school the next year, which I did. And I never loved school so much. To be in the real world as a 17-year-old with a job, riding the bus to and back from work and walking to the gym and walking to the bus station. I've been riding buses my whole life, but this time I was doing it because I chose to, not because I had to. That gives you a different sense of ownership on your life trajectory.
Mm-hmm. And you know that this is something that you can always leave because you have the option, versus being stuck in something that you don't want to do. I think a lot of people get stuck in a career that they hate, but because they don't have the structure, they don't have the discipline, they just kind of keep going along every single day, hating life, hating work. I think we all have to give ourselves a bit more credit about the gut feeling that we have in some crucial moments in life.
I love living in the U.S. I'm a Nigerian Irish American, and I say that proudly. Yeah. We have 330 million people in this country. We are the biggest experiment on the planet, and it comes with its downfalls, and I'm very aware of them. I'm not the patriot that's going to be like, oh, we're the best at this, and we're this, and we're that. No, we have our issues, 1,000%. Would I want to live anywhere else? Probably not. But I think there's a lot of other countries doing amazing things. And if we just look to the north in Canada, there's a lot of harmony that you guys have that I wish we did, but there's also a lot of differences. My job is not just to do what I believe in regard to building this self-help ecosystem and digital platform that I'm building, but it's also to speak the truth. And speaking the truth, in my opinion, is way more important than your right to say whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like censorship, I don't agree with censorship by any means, but I believe that truth should be the most important thing that we discuss, not your feelings on something. Your feelings are not scientifically driven. You know what I mean? So that's all these things make me who I am. Like this desire to be honest, truthful, and also to be a scientist and to take in information and evolve and adapt and adjust as I learn. It all goes together.
And to your point, Femi, I think we're misusing our ability to have the right of opinion. We're holding it higher than the truth in some cases.
Absolutely.
And that's where we have to draw the line.
Absolutely agree. When it comes to our safety as a society, what you do affects me. Just like secondhand smoke affects me. Well, you not being vaccinated could affect somebody downstream. You know what I mean? It could hurt somebody, and not intentionally, but for you to just act as if it's your choice and it doesn't affect anyone else, you're being idiotic, Yeah. And so I know this discussion wasn't supposed to go down that too, but hey, I'm an open book, so
absolutely. And this is what we want to hear. This is what people want to hear. You said, Femi, you mentioned that you're doing something to help people through HealthReel. What is HealthReel? How did you get started on that? Walk me through that.
Yeah. So HealthReel is kind of, it's the company that I formed over the last couple of years. We are a digital self-health assessment and education company. So we look at mental health, emotional health, and biometric data, which is basically physical health, right? Like body composition, metabolic insights, disease risk. But we also look at how depression, anxiety, and stress affect your ability to navigate what I call kind of these traditional health performance metrics, sleep, exercise, caloric intake, macronutrient splits, like all the things that make people's eyes roll back in their head, right? So I want to make it fun, I want to make it engaging. And I'm taking a bit of a different approach because I'm really looking at it holistically, where a lot of companies now are focusing on one piece of it. I'm focusing on the whole pyramid, like all of it at one time. And I think that gives me a really huge advantage. And also, it creates a bit of a barrier to entry in regard to the different IP that we have and partnering with NASA and working with Johns Hopkins and different things like that. So I think we're protecting ourselves by being holistic in our approach. And just to go back a little bit further, I've always had an interest in human performance. It's probably, along with like the stars in space, right? Being the best version of myself. I couldn't articulate it as a teenager probably the way I can now, but it's always has been what's driven me. My undergraduate degree is in psychology. I started working out when I was 15, supplementation. When I retired from the NFL and football in 2010, I jumped right into the brick and mortar health and fitness space with a training facility that I built with a couple partners in La Jolla, in San Diego. Got my personal training certification. I owned 35% of the business. Now, I just dove in head first and I loved it. And after a few years, I decided to apply to a program through the NFL. It's an NFL program that is highlighted by a 1-week immersion at a business school. This happened to be at Stanford, and I was mesmerized by the tech side of it. By the way, I had no tech background at all, you know? So I was just kind of learning as I went, kind of self-taught, as I've always been. Fast forward to 2014, which is 2 years after my trip to Stanford. My kids were in Maryland. I played for the Ravens. I was always going back and forth. I figured the selfish thing to do would be go to Stanford, which was my dream, was to go do my master's at Stanford. But the next best thing was I'll move back to Maryland and I'll go to Hopkins. I think when it comes to public health and when it comes to School of Medicine, Hopkins is as good as any school on the planet. So I enrolled at Cary at their business school. I got my MBA with an emphasis in digital health. I basically had this vision of a platform that looked at kind of how professional athletes and a professional medical team / nutritionist / trainer would analyze an athlete. And I wanted to build that for the regular consumer. Now, people see me and they think I built this for athletes. No, athletes can use this, but this is more for the general person. And as we know now, all kinds of people want more data, right? So I started looking at what's the functionality that we need? What's the IP and technology that we need? Does it exist? No, it didn't exist. That's the first thing. So now we have about 3 different patents that we're working on simultaneously. One of my professors at Hopkins introduced me to NASA tech transfer. There's a NASA lab right here in Maryland. I pitched NASA on the platform. They showed me an algorithm that they said they thought I could use. I was able to use it and license it. I was the first athlete, retired or active, to ever sign an exclusive licensing agreement with NASA or any kind of licensing agreement with NASA. I acquired that algorithm and I embedded it into the platform. I started hiring engineers and folks that were really astute in AI and machine learning. And now we have a nice little team that is highly intelligent when it comes to the kind of the regression, machine learning, neural network-based algorithms that we deploy to give people really amazing health data in minutes. Like they literally, and we're in beta right now. We're working on closing our Series A round of funding right now as well. It's really my life's work condensed down into this digital health assessment and education platform. That's really what it comes down to. And I'm super proud of what we've done, and we have a lot to do still. So
wow. Well, kudos to you and the team, Femi. That's amazing. Crazy how everything you've done in life all comes together at one point. And I think HealthReel is that, and you're seeing that right now, and you're aware of that. And that, I think, is a huge strength. How many people are there that went to the NFL, have an MBA with a background in technology, then have a partnership with NASA? Not many. So it's very hard to replicate that. And then I think for everybody watching and listening, finding things that others cannot copy.
I think you hit the nail on the head. When I talk to VCs and when I talk to potential partners, the one thing that I say is there's 4 seats at this table. And it's the consumer, it's the athlete, it's the practitioner, and it's the technologist.
Yeah.
I've sat at all 4 of those
seats.
I feel like sometimes it comes across as conceit or arrogance, but it's really not. It's really more me trying, because I've never been given anything. I've always had to prove myself. So I think in me, I just don't have a problem saying like, this is what I've done. I have a degree in psychology. I have a master's from Hopkins, my MBA. I'm a certified nutritionist, right? Yeah. I'm a former certified personal trainer.
Won a Super Bowl.
I won a Super Bowl. I played in the NFL for 11 years. I've coached. I've done speed and agility camps. I've done boot camps. I speak to MBA students. I speak to corporate executives. I guest speak I'm involved in so many things. It's not because I want people to know all my accomplishments. It's because I want people to know that I take this shit serious.
Yeah.
Like I don't do anything unless I prepare myself first. And every year prior to COVID, I've tried to immerse myself in some learning environment to acquire another credential or another, certification, so to speak. I didn't get to do one last year. I do want to do one this year, but the last one that I did, which I think has been so valuable, is I went to Harvard and I went to their Harvard Extension School in Cambridge, and I did a 1-week program there. I received my advanced negotiation certification. You know what I mean?
Clutch.
And I did that because I find myself talking to Apple and Fitbit and MyFitnessPal and Microsoft and Google and different people from all these different companies. At times they're just casual conversations, but to just go to Harvard for a week and to be in that environment with 40 other entrepreneurs and business professionals with one of Harvard's professors that teaches the course at Harvard, checking these educational boxes because I feel like they add value to the entrepreneurial closet that I have, right? I just pull out a different wardrobe that day for the task at hand. And sometimes you got to wear different things, so you got to wear them all. The more I can know, it just allows me to walk into a room and at least have some level of discussion and ability to speak freely and honestly about what I would need and what I want. And without learning and continuing to push myself, I may be completely in the dark sometimes, which is where you don't want to be as an entrepreneur.
You're building your tool set, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly it.
Yeah.
And then you can pull whatever tool you want to use when you need to use it. And this is the way I've also seen it, like, certification. I have an MBA, even stuff I learned in football. It almost always checks a box of, what are the 4 or 5 key skills that you need in your career, whatever you're doing at this point, and how do you build on these different requirements, right? So I honestly think, and question for you, Femi, as you said, negotiations, why aren't more students learning, or why aren't more students taught sales, negotiations? Why are more students not taught the softer skills? Because that is exactly, you're a CEO of a tech company and you are learning how to negotiate. Why is that the case, and why should people be investing in soft skills, especially as the disruptive environments gets even?
That is such a good question. And prior to COVID, I would do this. It was like mock interviews with business students at Hopkins. Yeah. We were doing these in person, and I would be one of the interviewers, right?
Yeah.
And all these kids from Asia, Africa, the US, the UK, their resumes are pristine. The issue is the soft skills. It is amazing how soft-spoken, unenergetic, they don't have the ability to be in the moment and kind of off the cuff and just be on their toes. And I try to tell them, like, look, and it comes down to your resume and another adult's resume. Yep. And maybe their resume is not as quite as good as yours, but I have energy with them and I enjoy being with them. Who do you think I'm going to hire? I'm going to hire them. You can be the most intelligent person on the planet, but if you can't pull that intelligence out and create a deliverable, something that I can use, or something that makes me feel like, oh, I can trust this person, you got to be outspoken. And presentation is everything. I'm the last person to tell anybody to put a suit on. I don't care about that. I want you to smell good. I want your breath to smell good. I want you to look like you care a little bit about how you look. And I want you to give me a little energy. And of course, I want you to have a great resume. But I'll give a little bit on the resume to have the other things, which is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a little crazy when I say that out loud, but it's true. If you can talk and you can articulate your thoughts, you have some creative ability, and you have some hill you're willing to stand on and say, I believe this and this is why. I don't want someone to be like, well, what do you think? What do you think? No, I didn't. No, it's not about what I think. I hired you to do something. I don't want to think about that anymore. I want you to think about it. I want you to give me advice and tell me which direction we should move in. And then I'll decide if I want to move in that direction or not. But I don't want to create the solution and then decide if it's the best one. That's not my job. I'm not that smart. I'm not that smart. I know what I don't know. I know that I need to have people around me that are experts in their field, and that's why you're here. You know what I mean? I find that kids today rely too much on texting instead of having a phone conversation or a video call. I think the soft skills, you hit the nail on the head, are extremely problematic, and trying to interpret and guess what people are thinking and feeling is only more complicated when you're not able to see a face and talk to somebody. You know, that's just the rule of thumb.
I had a rule in my team that 2 emails and a phone call. If you've been chatting with somebody and it's been 2 emails back and forth and you can't find a solution, I don't want to see any more emails, you call them. And the amount of times we've solved problems, Femi, much faster than otherwise, or faster than other teams. And the amount of times we've actually mended relationships and actually made friends because of this one phone call is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just a simple rule. Pick up the phone, because at the end of the day, we're all human. We're all trying to work towards one goal that we're all there for. You know, we don't have different goals. If you're in a meeting together, you're probably there for the same reason. So just work with each other. It's simple. You mentioned, you know, hiring people, right? And I think you probably have a very similar way of hiring that I do, which is based on potential, the energy and the attitude that somebody brings versus what they've done in the past. So my question for you is, how did the NFL influence you on that? Because let's say in training camp, there might be a lot of rookies that haven't performed before because they just, you know, came to the NFL, but they're there because they have the right potential. And is that something you've seen carry over from sports into your business?
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of Division I athletes and high school elite stars that fizzle out of the NFL, and it's because they never had to work hard. I actually think making somebody work hard early plays huge dividends down the road as an adult. There are so many kids that I grew up with that probably could have been professional athletes, but they were just too good too early. It just came too easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that when it comes easy, you don't look at your toolkit enough, and you don't look at what is going to make you better, because you're already the best in your little pool that you're in, right? But the lack of vision and the inability to see, well, guess what? There's a whole bunch of you somewhere else. How easy it is now, it's not going to stay that way. Very, 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 very few Jerry Rices out there, right? Very, 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 very few Lamar Jacksons out there, right? Yeah. For the most part, there's a lot of really talented kids, and the ones that are willing to grind and be humble and take coaching and go through the hard stuff are the ones that are going to continue to get better at each level. And I think for me, I got better at each level. I was a really good high school athlete. I was a really good college athlete, but guess what? I rose to the occasion at each next step, while other kids did not rise to the occasion. And it wasn't because of talent, it was because of psychology and regimen. They weren't willing to really be self-critical and take the coaching. And don't get me wrong, man, there's times when I left practice in tears as a kid because I got dug into by my coaches, you know. The time period that I was coming up in, we got coached a lot harder. We got coached a lot harder. But guess what? A lot of those coaches that dug into me, I'm still very close with to this day. Without them, I would not be where I was. And quitting was never an option, because I'm that person who, if you poke me, prod me, tell me negative stuff, it just lights a fire. You know, some people run away from that. I run into it. I run through it. I'm like, oh, what? Oh, I can't do what? I'm not good enough to do what? Oh, I can't, I'm never going to be what? Okay.
I'll show you.
Okay, let me write your name down. Okay, let me write your name down too. And that same attitude I take into business. I just love the negative feedback that I get, because I just take notes on that. And not notes that I go and like sit in my bed at night with my notebook and go, they said this, and no, not like that. But more like, oh, I've heard that before. You clearly don't know who I am. You clearly don't know that I've been hearing what I can't do my whole life. People always ask me, like, if you were in the corporate world, like, what would you want to be? I would want to be a chief strategist, because chief strategists get to have their hand in every pot of the business, right? Of the implementation of the product, of the strategy of the product, and the evolution of the product, right? I love that. I love being able to work with all the different teams to augment whatever we're trying to create.
Yeah, and you hit exactly the way, you know, what I've been taught and I've been doing as well, and it works, is that everything has a solution if you put it through a framework. And what you have to figure out is, what is your framework for your business, and what are the rules and guidelines that you want to be operating in, right? Just because a product didn't work or a service didn't work, it doesn't mean that you can't do something different. It just means that you have to put it through enough of an evaluation, identify the problem, identify the root cause objectively and factually, and come up with a solution. I think where most people fail is that they start to base opinions and start to get subjective about things. And that point, yeah, you're gonna say, you know, I failed or it didn't work or whatever, but it's because you didn't actually follow through with the framework and with the methodology you should be operating with.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about business school is that, you know, like a simple example is like the SWOT analysis, right? You know, it's not perfect, but guess what? It gets you to think objectively, right? I'm a very passionate, emotional person, but I don't let that passion or emotion allow me to make impulsive decisions. Like, I'm passionate and emotional because it's my personality.
Yes.
But when it comes to how I approach business, I'm very logical. But when I deal with people, I definitely think emotion and passion is important, you know? And so that's just me being my truest version of myself. I know how to tone it down sometimes. I'd rather not, but I know when I need to be quiet and listen, you know what I mean? So
that's a culture, man. That's a culture you want to build, right? Last question before we end the podcast here, Femi. On that same note, on the business side, what is one advice you would like to give the executives of businesses today that are coming out of COVID, and how can they better prepare themselves and also find success in this future uncertain world?
Yeah, you know, I think it all falls back on communication. I really believe that. You know, I think that it's really important to follow through with people. It's really important to speak, you know, your thoughts and be honest and transparent. The biggest problem that I have in regard to execution is when I'm working with a third party, they just go silent. Our conversations and our dependency on certain businesses to fill a gap is so important. And when executives and people in positions of collaboration don't hold up their end of the deal, that's a massive problem for a small company like mine.
Exactly.
And I just think that it's really important that we keep our word and that we recognize that we all didn't start on top of the mountain. Like, there was a long trekking journey to get there. And don't forget, like, there's other people behind you that are further behind than you are, but they're exactly where you were 2, 3, 5, 7, 8 years ago. Don't forget what that was like. And when you give people advice, or when you're talking or working with them, follow through. And that's for the people beneath you, behind you, following you, and also for the companies that you brought in to help you and work with you. Communication is the most important thing, and you've got to own it, and you've got to follow up on it. I think empathy and compassion is huge. Yeah. And one of the things that I say about HealthReel is that we're giving people information they've never seen before. We're giving them health scores. We're making weight and body composition recommendations, and that's sensitive stuff. You've got to find an empathetic, compassionate way of sharing that, and non-judgmental as well. Because at the end of the day, humans we are emotional. If you present it to them the wrong way, not only are they not going to accept your help, they're probably going to have some negative things to say as well, because they weren't prepared and you were not empathetic or compassionate in your delivery. So empathy and compassion in everything, for sure. 100% agree with you.
It's all about people. It's all about people.
It is.
Well, thank you so much, Femi. This was one of the, most informative and great podcasts that, we've had in this season, and I love your energy. So keep it up. Keep the energy. This is, one of the things that we love about you, Femi. So thanks again for coming.
Let's go. Yeah, thanks, man.